Hi, guys, and welcome to Fashion Truth with Marcellous L. Jones. As many of you know, I am a fashion pioneer and a fashion editor. I'm the creative talent and the founder of the FashionInsider.com magazine. And for 8 years, I was the host of the pioneering television program Men's Fashion Insider, which is broadcast each week in Canada, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Sweden, United States, and some other places. And in that wonderful show, we did a lot of wonderful things where we covered global menswear and we presented it on a world stage. And what we did, we had the best designers such as Jean-Paul Gaultier, Karl Lagerfeld, Donatella Versace, we had Calvin Klein, we had Christopher Bailey from Burberry's, etc., in that particular program. And we had a lot of celebrities too coming in to talk with us about menswear and what they like about menswear. We had Oscar winners Helen Mirren and Forest Whitaker. We had Janet Jackson and Usher, the Black Eyed Peas, Elton John. Had Mila Jovovich twice, so it was a really great program. So that's a little bit about me and my past. Today, in this particular episode of Fashion Truth, I wanted to talk to you about my powers to predict when a designer is not going to be at a fashion house for very long. Well, some years ago, there was this designer by the name of Jean-Paul Nault. He had been appointed the artistic director of the House of Cerruti when they decided to revive some excitement around them and go back to producing menswear and start doing things with the media involved. Well, I went, I saw the collection, and I said to myself, and I actually said to some other friends who were journalists as well, and I said, he's not going to really be here for a very long time if this is the best he can produce. Jean-Paul Nault is a technical genius. He's not a creative wizard, but he is a technical genius. He's the type of person that needs to work with a creative spirit as a duo. And his role in that would be to take those creative ideas from his other half and to bring them into reality. Then we turn around and we have this designer by the name of Ümit Bina. He's a talented Turkish designer who is based in Milan, and I loved his work where he was doing making dandy really more interesting for younger people and stuff. Who are starting to like really access some nice finances and wanted to like look nice. It would always feel comfortable as a man. Well, when he was appointed artistic director of the House of Trussardi in Italy, I was very excited because I was like, wow, it's going to be really nice to see what a designer like this can do now that he has a real budget behind him. This is going to be fantastic. So I went to the collection, the first one, and I was not impressed at all. And I said, okay, if he doesn't do better than this, he's not going to be here very long. Well, the last show that I went to from him, I think it was his second season or something like that, third season. The show was held in June, and it was in a garden, and there was a lot of mustard colored in the collection, and I simply was far from impressed with what I saw. And then I interviewed some journalists, of course, and some very important people such as Mr. Eric Jennings. He's a real nice guy. He's vice president over at Saks Fifth Avenue in the United States. So when I interviewed my friend James Sleaford, who is the fashion editor for the French edition of GQ magazine here in Paris, James had nothing but positive things to say about the collection. I don't know if it's just his good-hearted nature, or if it was television. He wanted to be careful about what he said on screen about one of their advertisers or potential advertisers. However, my impression was, I was standing there and I had this look of, I was completely incredulous to what he was saying because I was like, dude, do we actually just sit here together and see the same show? That we see the same collection being presented here in this beautiful garden. I was like, this collection is so sad. And I was like, this collection is nothing. And it was very surprising for me to see that Umit Bina, after so much promise, was doing such uninteresting work. I know it's really hard to innovate in menswear, but wow, that was really bad what he was doing. And then I told James, I said, James, you like this collection? And he was like, yeah. And I said, James, I don't think he's going to be here much longer. And this is the best that this young man can do with a budget behind him. He is not going to be here long, and he does not deserve to be there. Well, I was proven right by time. Mr. Umit Benan, he left soon after that. Then we turn around and we get to the case of Mr. Stefano Pilati in the wonderful house of Ermenegildo Zena. Now, after he and after Stefano Pilati in the house of Yves Saint Laurent mutually parted ways, as they say, he was scooped up by the house of Ermenegildo Zena. And I said, well, wow, if he goes to Zena, he might be able to do wonderful things, because the principal line that Ermenegildo Zena was presenting on the catwalk at that time was one of the most exquisite collections presented consistently in Milan, season after season. That fashion house was pumping out really beautiful collections that was rich in research, amazing construction, tailoring, um, really everything that a wealthy man could possibly want. And I loved everything they were doing there. The fashion shows were well thought out, just absolutely beautiful. There was not a single reproach that I could make about the Ermenegildo Zena line at that time. Now enter Stefano Pilati. Well, the first fashion show that Stefano Pilati did in Milan was for the menswear. And I specifically remember that the press was barred from having contact with him. Well, they wouldn't allow us to get to him to do interviews with him at that time. So, okay, I said, fine, whatever. Well, I saw the collection. I have a voice. I have eyes, and I'm going to speak my truth on this collection. But first, I'm going to speak with other colleagues and try to catch up to some other people to see if they share my point of view, or perhaps there's something that I missed about this collection, some type of a hidden genius that I personally failed to see. I mean, that was certainly um, possible, but not very probable. So I caught up to this one journalist from this magazine in Italy called Vogue, and I'm not going to tell you her full name, but let's just say that her name is Franca. Well, when I spoke with this woman by the name of Franca, who works at Vogue in Italy, um, it wasn't an overwhelming it was not an overwhelming endorsement of the collection from what she said. Now, remember, this was an interview for my television show, so I still have the archives of all of this stuff, so I'm pretty cool and confident with what I'm about to say. I got the impression from her that she was far from impressed with the collection. After I caught up to her, I tried to catch up with other journalists, and they absolutely refused to comment on the collection on camera. And that was okay, because I knew that they had seen exactly what I saw. And then I said to my colleague Tomas DeVoe at the time, I said, Tomas, this man is not going to be here much longer. If this is the best that he can do for this house, he's not going to be here much longer. Well, here we are today. Stefano Pilati is no longer at the house. The question was, why did Ermenegildo Zena take Stefano Pilati? Anyway, well, according to one of my sources, in a conversation, it was said to me that the House of Ermenegildo Zena decided to take Stefano Pilati because they wanted to bring more emphasis on their women's house, Agnona, and they wanted him. And in the deal, he was also named as artistic director of the House of Ermenegildo Zena in order for him to also be artistic director at Agnona, the women's warehouse, which is owned by Ermenegildo Zena. Now, let me say this to you. As this is something that was not going to put food on my table or put additional money into my hedge funds, I didn't even take the time to investigate it, because what matters most to me is what I see on the catwalk. That is what I report on. I don't report on the story behind the story, because it's not my place. I leave that for other people who have more interest in it and who do it much better than I do. So, moving on from that, let's just say that I was once again validated in that particular um, opinion that he was not going to be at that house for very long. So then when we go to the case of another famous designer like Ralph Simons over at the House of Dior, like I said, I was surprised when he went to that house. I didn't think that he would be a good fit for the house because he's a very different type of designer with a very different eye aesthetic that had been established by his predecessor, John Galliano. Uh, John left the house with a legacy of the most extravagant form of opulence, dreams and reverie. And Ralph Simons is completely the opposite of that, and he's also a very, very discreet personality in fashion. So I was very surprised that he went to the house. But beyond that, when I was looking at the collections, I was saying to myself, this is so very different. And I don't think that this is bringing a lot to the pages of the history of Dior. And I said, I just don't see him being at this house for a long time. And I'm once again being vindicated in saying what I said to my colleagues at the time. Then, but you know what? One of the funniest things in fashion is, normally a fashion house would give you three collections to get it right. But I do want to comment on this. I have the fastest firing in the history of fashion came at the house of Jean-Louis Charrière some years ago when there was this designer, Indian designer by the name of Ritu Berry. Ritu Berry became the house's artistic director for the Rated to Well line. The show took place at the Carrousel du Louvre. I will never forget that collection. I don't think any of us will ever forget that. They fired Miss Girl after her first show. I was like, damn, is it really like that? I'm Marcellous Jones, and this is Fashion Truth, and I hope you enjoyed hearing what I had to say, because if you did, let me know. You can also join me on my other adventures on our Twitter account at, the little hash with the little at sign, Fashion Insider and the number one. Fashion Insider number one on Twitter and on Instagram at the FI_mag. Thank you.